Durvan Stormwing is a banished dragon from the plane of Zathras, forced to live and learn in a very new, less powerful dragonborn form. He was banished from his plane by his family and can never return there. When on Zathras, Durvan learned important lessons about the abuse of power and how it can affect those under the thumb of the rulers. In this video, I'll be going over how to build and play Durvan in most tabletop role-playing games, but more specifically, D&D. Our topics will be as follows: personality, class and race, ability scores, proficiencies and feats, and gear. Now, Durvan can be played a lot of different ways, and customized really to be anything you'd like him to be. Once he's banished to this new plane, you can have him follow any sort of path you'd like. What I will tell you here are merely guidelines for how I originally imagined Durvan. Feel free to adapt and overcome however you see fit. Part 1. Personality. Durvan's personality can be summed up in only a few words: curious, confident, and caring. Durvan is curious, as the world he's just arrived in is very different from the one he came from, and he wants to learn more about it. When confronted with new technology or beautiful scenes of nature, he'll often find himself staring in awe, confused, and curious. Durvan is also confident. He doesn't let others tell him he can't do something. Only he knows what he once was and what he once could do. He can't tell people that he was once a dragon because they'll most likely fear and avoid him, and this would prevent him from doing the thing that makes him feel the most himself: caring. Durvan spent so many years blindly following what his family told him, so he feels he has a lot to make up for in the grand scheme of things. He doesn't want to leave this world without doing more good than bad. He wants to be remembered as a nice person. A few other little bits of information on Durvan that you may choose to add into your games is that he wears his scale mail armor because the big tough metal scales remind him of his older form, and he desperately misses the ability to fly, and remembers being the happiest when he was soaring above the world, looking down on the landscapes. Part 2. Class and race. As for Durvan's class and race, a lot of this should be no surprise if you listen to his story. Durvan's race is Dragonborn. More specifically, he will be a Dragonborn with blue dragon ancestry, whose physical age is right around 23. His real age is somewhere in the 200-300 range, although he doesn't actually know the real number. They stop celebrating after a while. Durvan's class in my version is a cleric. This is because his calling is helping people. He wants to help people as much as he can, and in my opinion, it is the best fit for who he is. For cleric domain, Durvan will choose the Tempest domain due to his deep relationship with lightning magic. For his cleric spells, he will prioritize casting spells that help his teammates like healing spells or shield of protection, and the main damaging spells he will prepare are his domain spells like Thunderwave or Call Lightning. Any other questions you may have on Durvan's class and race can be answered through looking at the different character sheets and description from levels 1 to 5, but hopefully most of those questions can be answered here. Part 3. Ability scores. The way you roll for ability scores may vary from campaign to campaign, and some people choose to do it in all sorts of different ways. For simplicity's sake, Durvan's and future characters' ability scores will be described as a tier list from 1 to 6. These tiers will hopefully tell you which scores are most important and where you should invest your highest rolls or most points if you're doing point buy. Keep in mind that this may change depending on what class you choose. With that in mind, let's get into our ability scores. Up first is Wisdom. Wisdom is the most important stat for clerics, so it has to be one of Durvan's highest stats, if not the highest, so he can do the things that he really wants to do. He's also a very old being and has amassed some wisdom just from being alive this long. Next is Constitution. This is because Durvan is likely going to be one of the main sources of healing for his team. He's going to want to have a higher than average health pool so he can stay alive and heal his team when fights do break out. In third place is a tie between Dexterity and Charisma. Dexterity will be very useful for Durvan, as being agile and being able to maneuver himself will come in handy, plus it'll boost his AC by a nice amount. Charisma is very important as well, as it'll be very useful to have bonuses when you need to intimidate an opponent or persuade a guard or two. Both Dexterity and Charisma are equally important for Durvan's stats and interests, and honestly they both equally make sense with Durvan's character. Choose one at your own discretion. For me, the tie goes to Dexterity. In fifth place is Strength. This is due to the fact that Durvan most likely won't be using a lot of weapons, as he kind of favors his magic instead. The only reason that this isn't Durvan's last place, or his dump stat, is because most of the time strength is actually one of the highest stats for dragons, so it would feel very wrong for me to just negate that entirely. And in last place is intelligence. This is going to be Durvan's lowest stat, and his dump stat if you're using point buy. My reasoning for this is that Durvan originally comes from a very different place, and the new world he finds himself in is very different, so all the knowledge he has about how the world works is just wrong. Feel free to use this idea to justify any wrong answers that you come up with for puzzles. You're welcome. Part 4. Proficiencies and Feats. The next big part in terms of building Durvan is choosing his starting skill proficiencies and providing some options for feats just in case you feel like you need one instead of an ability score increase when you get to level 4. For skill proficiencies, clerics get to choose 2 from History, Insight, Medicine, Persuasion, and Religion. Out of all that, Durvan will want to choose Insight and Persuasion. These 2 skills are best suited, in my opinion, to what Durvan should be good at. Depending on what background you choose, you may get some other skill proficiencies, but there's so many different ones that I don't really want to go into those choices right now. If you'd like to know what I chose for Durvan's background, you can always read it in the character sheets down below in the description. As for feats, like many things today, there are 2 main options that fit Durvan. First is Elemental Adept, choosing lightning as the element. This will make our lightning spells work on more targets as well as amp the damage just a little bit. The second option is Meta Magic Adept, and this allows us to add effects onto our spells that can allow them to heal more people, do more damage, all that really cool stuff. It's a very fun feat, I recommend you look into it. Part 5. Gear. The last main part of building a character is their gear. For the most part, a lot of characters' identity is in their weapons, armor, and looks. Batman wouldn't be as recognizable without the batsuit or his utility belt. For D&D, most of your starting gear comes from your class and background, but since we aren't talking about backgrounds, let's talk about Durvan's starting gear from his class. Between a mace and a warhammer, Durvan will pick a mace. Between scale mail armor, leather armor, or chainmail armor, Durvan will pick scale mail. Between a light crossbow and 20 bolts or any simple weapon, Durvan will pick a light crossbow with 20 bolts. And lastly, between a priest pack or an explorer's pack, Durvan will pick the explorer's pack. He also gets a shield and a holy symbol just as free items, so that's important to note as well. Alrighty, that is just about it when it comes to Durvan and how to build him in D&D. Feel free to use Durvan as an NPC, as your first character, as a villain, whatever floats your boat. And keep in mind what I said in the beginning, a lot of this is up to you and up to interpretation. You can choose to have Durvan's story follow any sort of path you like once he wakes up in this new place. He become a warrior, or a monk, or really anything. The choice is yours, lore keepers. Influence his story in whatever way you see fit. For now, this meeting of the Lore Keepers Guild will be adjourned. Until the next time I see you all, be on the lookout for stories worth listening to, and send any you find to me in the comments below. I'm your Guildmaster, and until next time, remember, Ad Astra per Fabulous.